When you have a child or teen who is struggling in school, it can be overwhelming to determine exactly what's going on, what kind of testing is needed, and how to get the right kind of help in or out of school. Add to that distance learning, the return to school, and the ongoing social events of 2020, and parenting just got much more complicated. Today, we have neuropsychologist Dr. Oren Boxer and neuropsychology fellow Dr. Samantha O'Bannon with us to talk about these issues and answer your questions around testing and supporting your kids in this crazy upside down world. This is LD Expert Live. Welcome to LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning differences, dyslexia, and auditory and attention challenges. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers and author of At Wit's End, A Parent's Guide to Ending the Struggle, Tears, and Turmoil of Learning Disabilities. This book will give you an understanding of why some bright students struggle in school and what it takes to change that permanently. To get a free copy, go to parentsatwitsend.com. Let's say hello to Lauren, our Director of Clinical Growth and Operations at Stowell Learning Centers, and to all of you who have joined us in the chat. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. Hello to everyone who is watching us live. Let us know that you're here and where you're checking in from by commenting in the chat, either on Facebook or on YouTube. We already have Mona checking in from our friends at Futures Academy in Pasadena. Welcome. Hi, Mona. Parents, another resource for you besides LD Expert Live is our private Facebook group, Mom Squad. Mom Squad is a resource, like I said, for you, for parents of kids and teens with learning and attention challenges. We share resources in Mom Squad. I've posted a lot of content related to learning challenges like dyslexia, auditory processing, executive function skills. And so you can find all of that by either going to our Facebook page and finding the Mom Squad logo, or going to Facebook groups and putting in the search bar SLC Mom Squad, and you can request to join. It's, again, a resource for you. And we've amassed a lot of members, a lot of parents out there looking for resources for their kids. So we'd love to have you. Again, let us know that you're here, where you're checking in from. If you have questions for today's guests, I will be coming back on soon to present those to the guests and get your questions answered. So thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. If you're just joining us, this is LD Expert Live. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers. Our guests today are Dr. Oren Boxer and Dr. Samantha O'Bannon. Dr. Boxer is a licensed clinical neuropsychologist who specializes in the neuropsychological assessment, diagnosis, and treatment planning for children and young adults, as well as research around evidence-based therapies for ADHD. In addition to seeing clients in his private practice, Dr. Boxer also serves as a clinical faculty member at the UCLA Semel Institute for Neuroscience and Human Behavior within the David Geffen School of Medicine. Born in Bermuda, Dr. Samantha O'Bannon is a pediatric neuropsychology fellow who specializes in the assessment and treatment of children and young adults. Dr. O'Bannon has a passion for advocating for others. She recently published a coloring and coping activity book entitled Essentially Me, which is dedicated to children of color. Welcome, Dr. O'Bannon and Dr. Boxer.
Thank you.
It's so nice to have you.
Hi, thank you.
You're our neighbors in Pasadena, California, and we love having you as a resource for our families. I wanted to start out today by talking about testing. A neuropsychological assessment it sounds like a really big deal. I mean, it's such big words. Why would someone get a neuropsych evaluation?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jill. And thanks again for having us today. I think, yeah, even the term neuropsychology, not only is it difficult to spell, but it seems overwhelming in a lot of ways. But really at the heart, it's a way to help families understand how their child sees the world, how they process information, how they understand not only things at school, but friends, relationships with their parents and themselves. It's a way for us to bring another chapter to the child's narrative that's very strength-based that can help their development.
And so what does that kind of evaluation involve?
So it's pretty comprehensive. We look at how a child processes information from an intellectual standpoint. Of course, we look at their academics to understand where they're achieving in math, reading, writing. But also, what are the areas that are maybe holding them back in certain places like school or with friends or behavior? And what are the areas of strength that we could capitalize on? So we look at attention, executive functioning skills, fine and gross motor, their learning profile, and also their social emotional understanding. How do they see themselves as a child, as a sibling, as a friend? To really bring all that information to bear in putting together a roadmap for support.
And so when it's all said and done, what kinds of information are parents going to come away with?
So they get very explicit and very clear recommendations around how to support their child. So if we find some kind of learning difficulty, for example, we don't just give a general recommendations on how to address it. We bring evidence-based interventions to the table and talk to parents about, how do we put this in place? Who are the best people to help, bring this intervention online and really support your child?
Mm-hmm. And that's so helpful, because so often I feel like parents come to us and they're very frustrated. They say, well, I got this testing, but it tells me there's a problem, but it doesn't tell me now what to do. So I love the planning part of it also.
That's one of the reasons why I started Insight Collective, is because so many families came to me with this evaluation and all these great recommendations, but they didn't have clear guidance or even know how to put those recommendations in place. And so we at Insight Collective, we bring together all these other experts to help guide families through the process of support and treatment.
That's great. And how is a neuropsychological assessment different from a school assessment?
I'll actually take this one. Jill, thank you so much again for bringing us on. This is so exciting, such a meaningful topic during this time. I guess to answer that question, I'll use a metaphor that Dr. Boxer likes to use all the time. I have got like a growing list of his metaphors because they're just always phenomenal. So we kind of liken our neuropsych evaluations to that of kind of like farming, right? So if you think about it, a school evaluation can see a child struggling, they can see the weaknesses that are going on academically, and we can view those as kind of like the crops, right, that are above the soil. They can see that they're wilting, they can start targeting certain areas of the crops to be able to address or fix those areas. A neuropsych eval is able to identify below the surface. We're looking at the soil and we're able to see which nutrients are lacking. What else is going on that's underneath the soil? Perhaps we need new soil. And we're really able to look at sort of what's missing and get to the core of the problem in order to provide a more robust understanding of why these weaknesses are coming about and why we're actually seeing different concerns in an academic setting.
I love that, because that is so in line with how we work and how we look at learning. I mean, if a child has difficulty with reading, then it's kind of like, oh, well, let's give them more reading. But there's a reason why that child had the difficulty to begin with. And until we go down below the surface and really take a look and see what are the issues under there that are getting in the way. We're really just kind of spinning our wheels. So I love the analogy, and that helps a lot in kind of sorting out the difference between a typical school assessment and a little more in-depth neuropsych evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
So if a family were to get a neuropsychological evaluation, how could they then use that to help with their IEP or special accommodations at school? Do you ever do that kind of work with families?
Go ahead. Well, I'll say this part and then I'll tag team for Dr. Boxer. Absolutely. We have lots of referrals that come in from the schools, specifically having to do with being able to support IEPs, or even with what we call IEEs, an independent educational evaluation. That's the part that I'll tag team and have Dr. Boxer explain. But we are definitely accustomed to working with the schools. We love to have this collaborative approach with our assessments. We want everyone to be a part of a treatment team, and the treatment team doesn't just involve us as clinicians, but also the academic support staff, the teachers, and everyone involved, parents. We really like looking at each of our evaluations as kind of this whole-centered care, right? And being able to provide a wraparound service, if you will, to be able to support and accommodate in every area of this child's life so that it's really able to make the most impact. And everyone is able to apply certain accommodations. But in terms of IEE and everything else, go ahead, Dr. Boxer.
I'll just speak briefly to, so some families are familiar with an IEP, which is an individualized education program, and that's an agreement by the school and teachers to say, yes, this child is struggling for these reasons. They meet eligibility for special services, and that may include everything from academic support to occupational therapy, and those sorts of things. An IEE, which a lot of families don't know about, is an independent educational evaluation. That's where the school contracts with an office like ours, let's say, and they pay for the evaluation. So the family doesn't have to pay for it, but they get the same level of evaluation and support when it comes to recommendations. And that's for public schools, but we also work very closely with a lot of local private schools. And just like Dr. O'Bannon was mentioning, it's very important to work hand in hand with teachers to get their perspective on how, especially now, what are the teachers seeing? What are the limitations with remote learning, and how has it affected them in their achievement in certain areas? So working closely with schools is really important.
Really important, because how that child looks, in online school or on campus, is going to be a little bit different. So absolutely, that collaboration is really important. This is LD Expert Live. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers, and we're talking today with Doctors Boxer and O'Bannon about neuropsychological testing. Let's check in with Lauren and see what questions are coming up for our viewers around testing and evaluation.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone checking in. Again, let us know that you're here and where you're checking in from. We do have a question from Catherine. Let's see. How do we find neuropsychologists that practice in a similar way to what you are describing in our area? Because we have viewers from all over the world, or is what you are describing pretty standard?
So that's a great question. In most cities, you will find a pediatric neuropsychologist. Oftentimes, you may want to ask your pediatrician. A school may know local neuropsychologists, or if you work with educational specialists, they work closely with neuropsychologists and evaluators. So those are probably the best places to start.
Okay.
And is there anything in particular that a parent should ask to, just to make sure that they're not only getting testing, but they're getting some guidance beyond that and some of that treatment planning? Is there anything in particular they should be asking for to make sure that that's part of that neuropsychologist service?
That's a great question, because it is so. Oftentimes, it's a costly endeavor to go through this process, and it's difficult to navigate. So, we offer free consultations with families. Just get on a phone, get on a Zoom call, and walk them through the process. And through that experience, families get to know our orientation, how we evaluate certain things, and the kinds of resources we have access to. We can give examples of how we make recommendations to address certain issues as they come up in the evaluation. So I'd recommend that families try to do that, get a free consultation with the local evaluator.
And if I can also add to that, I think another great thing is making sure that you just ask questions. A lot of times families come in and they feel like this is such a formal process. They're afraid to ask the questions they really want to know or dig deeper, or they feel like, okay, well, I can wait to share this piece of information until later, or perhaps they'll bring it up. Keep in mind that many of us, as we go into this assessment, we really, really want to hear your story, and we want to understand how we can be helpful. And so to a certain extent, less is not more. If you have a specific concern, feel free to share it and be confident in knowing that that is what the evaluation is for, to be able to address these concerns. So put it on the table.
That's great.
Absolutely. Thank you. Claire is just asking for some clarification about the different types of evaluations. Either, what is there a distinction between a neuropsychological evaluation or an IEE, as you referred to? Can you just clarify those different, or if there is a difference, or if it's the same thing?
We could probably have a whole talk just on that. So I could tell you from our practice, our ethical obligation is to answer the referral question, okay? And oftentimes that requires more comprehensive testing, which would take us beyond what a school would typically do, which is often kind of more focused on academic achievement, right? So a school will contract for what's called a psychoeducational assessment, which is typically IQ and then academic achievement. But a parent may come in and say, my child is struggling with something in school, but they're also struggling with anxiety, and there's attention, all these other things. So ethically, even though we're not contracted to necessarily assess that, in order to really answer the referral question and get the right support in place, we go above and beyond what the school needs to make sure that the parent has what they need at the end of the evaluation, or the child has what they need. So I guess, to make a long story short, a neuropsych evaluation is much more comprehensive and includes the whole child, not just the academic piece.
Perfect. This, I'm going to put up a long question from Andrea, and this kind of piggybacks off of this. She's looking for some advice on where to go. She says, hello from Las Vegas. My oldest son is turning 5 at the end of May. He has severe ADHD, and we struggle a lot with attention-seeking behaviors. He gets occupational therapy since he turned 2, and we've been trying to show and teach him what's okay and what's not okay, but now setting limits in a more firm and structured way, because otherwise he gets lost and goes to a place where it's just very unregulated, jumping, being loud, doing everything he knows he's not supposed to do. He's very social and sweet, but can also be very, and then it got cut off, very defiant and disobedient. How do I help my son have less of those attention-seeking behaviors? Teachers and therapists all say he can do it, and this is behavior. Do you have suggestions for her of, one, do you test kids that young? And 2, would this be part of a neuropsych evaluation this part of like digging deeper to really kind of see what's going on with him?
We do test kids that young, but I'm going to let Dr. O'Bannon take this one. She has a lot of experience with it. I'll jump in if you have other questions.
Yeah, we can definitely tag team. So as Dr. Boxer mentioned, absolutely, we do test kids this young. There is this question's multi-layered, and we could spend at least probably about 15 minutes just talking about some of the things. So just to briefly sort of summarize, one thing that we like to use in our field in terms of like a behavioral measure, especially when it comes to being able to set boundaries and appropriately sort of teach like boundaries and appropriate behavior, is making sure that there are certain structures and certain routines. It sounds like they're doing that, and they're trying to set limits in a more firm and structured way. But the other aspect of it, just briefly, is a lot of times we forget to acknowledge the fact that any attention is still serving the point of attention, right? And so, especially during this time when we're all frustrated, we're home, there's a lot going on, we're not really able to get out of the house and do the things that we would normally do. It's very easy to sort of address those negative behaviors in a way where, as a parent, you're looking at it, you're like, well, I'm disciplining this child, or I'm telling them not to do something. And so why aren't they listening? But in reality, that's also a form of attention, right? They're still getting what they need from you. And so just being able to provide very like structured ways, for example, you can establish like behavioral charts and rewards, having like a timeout corner, and okay, if you do X, then this is what's going to happen in Z, and being consistent with that. If we're having a good day, or even bringing it down, he's 5, if we have a good 30-minute period where you're able to do what we've asked you to do, then you get this sticker, and a certain amount of stickers will lead to this reward that you really love. Being able to set up different systems behaviorally would work out really well for many kids. And absolutely, going back to the initial question, this is a common referral that we get. And in an assessment, we're sort of able to look again a little bit beneath the surface just to figure out, what else could be going on, what else is attributing to this behavior, what is the function behind it, why is this child actually performing these behaviors, and what is it that he's actually seeking, so that we can give more specific and targeted interventions for that particular child based on their interests.
And I just want to jump in and say to this parent, you want to tune in next week to our broadcast, because we are going to have Dr. 𝗦𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗟 on the show, and he is truly one of the nation's experts in challenging behaviors. So, and children with these really difficult behaviors. So be sure and tune in for that as well, along with all of the great advice that Dr. O'Bannon shared.
Absolutely. And also piggybacking on that, Ďeborah Anafarian was a past guest where she also spoke about challenging behaviors. She has an organization called Helping the Behaviorally Challenging Child. And she says, my understanding is that the law provides that a student can be evaluated for IEP qualification assessment by parents submitting a letter to the school. Then an assessment starts, and the school has 90 days to get back to the parent with their assessment or evaluation that the student qualifies or doesn't meet the criteria for an IEP. Is it the same procedure for an IEE, or an independent educational evaluation?
Right. That's a great question. So yes, everything you said about the IEP process is correct. An IEE comes about if there's a disagreement between the school and the parent. So if the parent says, well, if the school decides he doesn't meet qualifications for special education services or an IEP, the parent can say, well, I don't agree with that, and here are the reasons why, so you have to justify it. And I'd like an IEE. I'd like an independent evaluator to take a look at my child to really understand what's going on and provide their recommendations. And so the school is obligated to comply with that request, and then they'll offer some names of evaluators, or you can even come in with some qualified names of evaluators, and they have to at least assess their qualifications and offer evaluation with that person.
Perfect. And Andrea says, yes, we will be here next week, and thank you for your advice. I have a parent that just reached out in Mom Squad. It is also a lengthy question or situation. Basically, if I can summarize, her son is in high school. She's requested testing twice from the school. He was tested and went through the IEP process, never qualified. He has terrible grades, but tests well enough that I'm told there's no problem. Should she go the neuropsychological assessment route? And would the school pay attention to that if testing showed that he did need it?
So we get those calls a lot and those concerns. Look, it costs money to provide services for a child through a school district. And sometimes if the child or the student doesn't meet certain criteria for what's considered failing or struggling, that child isn't considered eligible, despite what the parents see, where it's just, this is not my child. They're capable of so much more. My recommendation is if a family is really struggling with the school, to find an advocate, to give them more information about the law and regulations around these services through public school districts. Task Advocates is a great free consultation that parents can access. They can Google it. It's TASK, and just get more information about the process.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And we have Mara checking in from Charlotte, North Carolina, and she says she will definitely be here next week. She has a 12-year-old with mood swings, as well as flipping a light switch. Anything that does not go to plan results in screaming, giving up, blaming others, and negativity. And we do know that that takes a huge toll on a family and on parents. And so we actually also hear that a lot from our parents. And those are parents that, that are looking for resources and help. And let's see, Deborah Ann chiming back in. Thank you. Based on your reply to my IEE question, then the school is then paying for the IEE, or does the parent have to pay in any circumstances if they're requesting an IEE from the district?
Right. So the school is obligated to pay for the assessment. So they contract directly with the evaluator, and they pay the evaluator.
Okay. Thank you. Well, keep posting questions, everyone, and I'll check back in a little bit to check in on those questions. Thanks, everyone.
Perfect. Thanks, Lauren. This is LD Expert Live, and we are speaking with neuropsychologist Dr. Boxer and neuropsychology fellow Dr. O'Bannon. So let's shift gears here a little bit. This past year has been very heavy with social issues and, of course, the pandemic. Our kids may not say very much about these things, but they certainly hear it and they see it in the media. So how does all of this unrest impact our children and teens?
Dr. O'Bannon, you want to start?
Sure. I will get on my soapbox for a brief second. I always talk about this topic. It is so important and so relevant. I think first and foremost, it's important that everybody understands that we are in the midst of a massive community-based trauma. Okay. Everyone is suffering from some sort of loss during this time, whether it be the loss of a family member, the loss of freedoms, the loss of, a separation between your home and school environment or your home and work environment. There's a lot that's happening. And because of that, there's a lot that's coming up in our homes. There's a lot that's coming up internally. Many of our kids are starting to demonstrate behavioral issues or concerns. There's mood swings going on. There's irritability, there's fatigue, there's loss of interest in things. For many of, kids as well, but for many of us as adults, we're struggling to maintain our sense of productivity. It's created this beautiful, perfect storm. And so with that, I love bringing up this point just so that everyone is aware and you give yourself the grace to understand that you are not alone. We are all struggling during this time. We are all trying to get to a point where we're able to adjust to this new concept of a new normal, and also try to figure out what that means, right? Where every other day there's something else coming out in the news that might be disruptive or disturbing, or we get a vaccine, are we all going to go back to normal? And then if we do, what does normal even look like, right? And so this is a time where it's especially critical for all of us to be attuned to our mental health and to make sure that we are practicing good self-care, and that we're just understanding that a lot of things that we're seeing are a direct result of a year of being cooped up in our houses and having a lot of the things that we would typically have done kind of go away.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Boxer, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dr. Bannon brought up great points. I think as a parent, kids are oftentimes very resilient, and they're not going to sit down and talk about their feelings and talk about the things that are causing them stress. But you're going to see it in their behavior. You're going to see that they're more irritable. You're going to see that they're kind of more defiant, that they're, losing interest in the things that they want to do. And as our country starts to open up and schools start to open up, some children are going to be really eager to do these things again, right? Do their activities and do school in person. Some kids are going to have a hard time with it. And I think the most important recommendation for parents is to find those quiet moments with your child and just provide a space for them to share how they feel. Oftentimes for kids, it's before bed. They're getting tired. They're kind of reflecting on their day. You may be massaging their back, and that's when they share their feelings or something that happened with their friends. So really, as parents, it's so hard to do, I know, because we're so busy and if our kids are active and just very demanding, it's hard to find that time. But 5 or 10 minutes even a day when a special activity really can allow for this emotional experience and this bonding moment, which is critical as our kids prepare to transition back to, some of these activities in school situations.
Right. And I think as things begin to open up, I agree. It's probably not going to ever be normal again, exactly the way it was before, but we will tend to get busy outside the home. And so this is really a good opportunity to find those 5 or 10 minutes to you're already there. You're not spending all your time driving to just, build those relationships and those nice little habits that you can continue on as things begin to change again. So, Dr. O'Bannon, you recently published a coloring and coping activity book called Essentially Me. And it's really a lovely book and really fun. And I would just love for you to talk to us about it.
Sure. Thank you. So I don't even know where to start. Really, I guess I can say this was sort of a passion project, if you will. Just something that I needed to do for myself. And I also wanted to do for others. As we keep talking about this topic of all things 2020 and pandemic and COVID and everything else, I just feel like there's a lot that's happened in the past year, a lot of social unrest, a lot of discomfort, and kind of piggybacking off of what I said earlier, I knew that there was this need to sort of get back to what we know, as you've just mentioned, start formulating these routines of coping and self-care and just being able to take these quiet moments just to kind of relax ourselves, get back into a sense of peace and create a semblance of something that seems normal, that's helpful. So with the coloring book, it actually, started out where the goal was to just highlight different professions dedicated to children of color. It's entitled Essentially Me, just because I wanted to push this message that in light of everything going on, every child, but especially children of color in this time, because of the messages that have been communicated this year, they are essential. They're important too. They matter. And I just wanted to dedicate something towards them. However, it's highlighting a bunch of different professions, similar to any children's coloring book that you would see. But I also wanted to put little nuggets in there that would be really helpful. So it has handwriting practice opportunities for our younger ones. And on the back of every page is a really cool coping activity, things that I used to, that were my go-tos in therapy that I would recommend to families. They can be self-directed activities, or they can even be things that everyone does as a family. And I just picked some of my faves, things that were really meaningful to me and have been helpful to different clients that I've seen, and just kind of put it in there as sort of hey, if you're wondering what you can do today, let's work through the book. We can not only color and take time, which I don't know about you guys, but I love coloring as an adult. It's very relaxing. So we can color, we can work on things, we can express ourselves through art. And at the same time, we also have these cool little fun activities that we can do on the back of the page to kind of bring us all together.
Well, it's just packed with all kinds of really great stuff.
Thank you.
And cute drawings. Did you draw those?
I did not. I actually hired what do you call them? Like an illustrator, I guess, like an artist to draw it for me.
Well, it was a great collaboration of ideas and pictures. It's really cute.
Thank you.
Kids often ruminate on things and they have trouble expressing their concerns. And so they end up carrying around this big knot of worry and misinformation. So how would you suggest to parents maybe language that they could use to use this book as a conversation starter? That was kind of what I was thinking about when I went through it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are so many different great resources, a lot of which we recommend to our parents, not just this, but lots of great resources that provide language for dealing with like having that conversation. Just a brief plug for one that we often use, because I just thought about it this week, is like there's a really great product. It's like Make Your Warrior a Warrior, right? So just providing certain language that makes them feel empowered. But in terms of this book, I just find that in my own personal experience, clinical experience, with family members, with friends, whatever the case is, a lot of times children open up with artistic and creative expression. It makes it a little easier for them rather than just being like, so tell me what's going on today, being able to provide them with something that's relaxing and amusing, and then being able to kind of navigate that conversation. So, just being able to get creative, going into the book and taking some paper and, have like an art night where everybody's just drawing, like draw something that makes you happy. And as you're talking about those things, or as you're engaged in the activity, then it can help you kind of transition to opening up that conversation, and just being like, what did you draw? Well, what is it about? What's made you happy today? Or if you're going in a different direction, what are some things that bothered you today? And just being able to model that it's okay to not only ascribe language to these things, but it's okay to talk about things that upset you. And here's an appropriate and adaptive way to do so. And so I think a lot of times, at least the feedback that I've gotten, is that sometimes we forget how resilient our kids are. I know Dr. Boxer kind of mentioned that earlier, and they're really bright. They really understand really more than we give them credit for.
Right.
And so as adults, we have this tendency to kind of be like, oh, well, I don't want to talk about anxiety, or I don't want to talk about worries or fear or sadness or any of these things, because I don't want to plant that in their minds. But for some of them, it's already there. And so it's just important to have that dialogue. And I think with this particular resource, it just makes it a little easier to where everybody can be engaging in a group activity or in a family-based activity, and then still have conversation. Just really briefly, one of my favorite activities that are in there, one that I used to use all the time, is like a feelings Uno. Something as simple as playing an Uno card game, but ascribing different emotions to different colors can be so helpful, where you give the child an opportunity to label what those emotions are. The common ones is like, okay, well, red is angry, blue is sad, green is happy, and yellow is like whatever they pick. They usually, like, depending on the age, they pick something really cute or just whatever they want. Could be like anxiety or worry. And every time you play a card, you have to take that opportunity to discuss something that serves that emotion or caused that emotion. And so with every activity you can find a way to sort of bring in this conversation and open up the doors. And then it's fun.
Wow. I love that. Our students just love Uno. And
yes.
So that's it's a familiar tool used in a different way, but that kind of facilitates some other kinds of conversations. It's really great.
Absolutely.
Well, congratulations on it. I think it's going to be a great tool for families.
Thank you. Thank you.
So kids and families have had to go through huge adjustments, as we've been talking about in the last year with the lockdown and online school. And even though everyone is anxious for children to be back in school in person, that's another big change. And Dr. Boxer and I were talking about this earlier. So, Dr. Boxer, how do you suggest that parents prepare their children for that transition?
Yeah, this is really another kind of pivotal moment in our child's development and their experience with this whole, pandemic. And I just want to take a second to honor the families who have kids who actually are flourishing in some ways with this quarantine. Some of those kids may have had some social anxiety or some social difficulties, and a lot of those stresses have been removed with the pandemic. So I think different families are going to be dealing with different issues as there's this return to school. But certainly, a lot of kids have struggled with a lack of social connection. So I encourage some other activities are opening up. I know locally, AYSO is offering very safe, physically distanced soccer practice. Local baseball tryouts are starting, all remaining physically distant with masks. So depending on, this is a very personal issue, but depending on a family's comfort level, they should look into local activities, especially ones that are in the local city, because then their kids are going to be connecting with the friends that they may potentially be going to school with again. So starting those activities up at whatever level of comfort you're at is probably a good start. Connecting your kids with their friends again through even video games. I know, like, so many people are like, well, my kids are on the screen all the time, I don't want to put them on another screen with video games. But I see video games as something we can allow for our kids if it's set up like a play date. So if your friend in real life, not somebody in another part of the world that you don't know, but a friend in real life for your child is playing the same game and they're chatting and they're communicating, I see that as a play date, and I see that as an opportunity to socialize. So that's something that I recommend doing. And then just getting them, again, comfortable socializing and engaging with their peers, because, my kids, my second grader recently returned to public school 4 days a week. And it's great in a lot of ways, but it's also very unusual and very different. And so understanding very clearly what the rules are going to be when your child goes back to school, going through those with your child, even walking through in your mind or in a role play of like what the day will be like the next day when they go to school, reminding them of the rules and the safety precautions, but also saying, look, even though these things are weird, it's still great that you get to see X, Y, or you get to see your teacher in person. And so reminding them of the positive as well.
All of us do better with predictability. And so a little bit of warning when there are changes coming is a good thing. And so just preparing ourselves and our kids in advance for what going back to school on site is going to involve. And as you said, really understanding the rules in advance will help everything go more smoothly. For kids who are really disrupted by change, we find that spending time not only talking about it, but as you said, actually role-playing it, visualizing it many times about what is going to happen is really, really helpful. And in addition to that, I would encourage people to keep everything surrounding school as routine as possible, because we like routine and predictability.
Yeah. So preparing for that transition. And even, so many of our kids are used to waking up, getting out of bed and going to their class. Well, you're going to have to set another half hour, 45 minutes or more to really prepare for that. So getting weeks in preparation to changing bedtime and those routines just as a practice is probably a good idea.
Right. Well, let's check back in with Lauren and our viewers in the chat before we wrap up for today.
Yes, thank you for touching upon it. You've kind of anticipated some of our viewers' questions about how to prepare for going back to school. We have two sides of the coins. of the coin here. Katrina is a mom who has a 10-year-old who thrived academically with virtual school. So that's the positive. It's less hectic. There's fewer distractions. He gets one-on-one attention. And so she, kind of asked the question, well, how do I prepare him to go back to school when it is not as ideal of an environment for him, without losing all the gains he's made? So your advice about routines definitely would be relevant to her, of starting to establish those routines early on, preparing for that, keeping a positive message around going back to school, that we don't have to anticipate that it's going to be bad, or it's going to be as bad as it used to be. Any other advice for parents who are in that group where virtual learning actually was a little bit of a relief for their children?
I'll just say one thing, and I'll let Dr. O'Bannon chime in. But identify what those strengths were that you found in one-on-one learning. Really operationalize them in the sense of write them down as if like you're making recommendations for the teacher, and then share those with the teacher. That my child does best when this happens and this happens, and information is repeated, or get that information down in a very kind of like list format, and share it with the teachers, because the teachers want to be able to be more effective as well. And if you've realized this in the one-on-one setting, I'm sure the teachers would be receptive to doing the same thing as much as they could.
And tagging on to that, I was thinking, kind of evaluating that with your child too. It may be that because the screen is right in front of them, the child is much more focused on the teacher's face when they're talking. And so if they can, recognize, oh, that really helped me to listen. So in class, even though there's lots of other stuff around me, when the teacher's talking, I'm going to try to focus on the teacher's face or on the teacher's mouth. Just exploring the things that were working and see how that can functionally look in the classroom with the child as well.
Mm-hmm. My daughter's she's in TK, and she's been back in person, and her teacher wears a face shield, knowing that facial expressions and the mouth is really important. We want our teachers to be protected, but so she has a full face shield, and that has been really helpful for just helping the kids to feel secure, that they could see the teacher smile, and things that we've kind of lost behind the masks. So, okay. And then the other side of the coin here from Wendy, she has a two-part question. I'm going to address the transition back to school first. She has, her son was in 4th grade when the pandemic began, and he will most likely be going back as a 6th grader, having done all of 5th grade virtually. He's regressed socially these past months, and her comment got cut off, and it's 2 parts. So she's, it'll be a big adjustment for her son to go back with a diagnosis of autism. Any recommendations for preparing him for this big change?
So, my oldest son has also started when he was in 4th grade, and he has done all of 5th grade, remote, and he's going to be going back for 6th grade. For him, 6th grade is a different school entirely, right? And it's going to be a completely new experience. So I think there are a lot of challenges for this cohort who, is going in some school districts, middle school. So if it is a new building, it's important that, if possible, do a virtual tour or a physical tour if it's safe, walking through like the hallways. Where are the bathrooms? Where's your class going to be? Is there going to be a locker? Right? A locker, everything's like here in my bed. So like experiencing those kind of executive functioning challenges that may be coming is going to be really important to explore. But at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, trying to find ways to help your child engage in safe activities, play activities, even like I said, through video games. If they're chatting, it's a friend. Starting that process, especially if these are kids that he's going to be, encountering in 6th grade, that's really going to be important.
And, thinking about a child who has some social difficulties or social anxieties, it's possible that the fact that going back, they will most likely be distanced. You know, there will be specific places where they can stand, where they're going to be able to sit. And it's possible that that distance will allow for, you know, just kind of a halfway between being at home and on the screen and being in a whole, you know, in a whole bunch of kids, you know, in very close proximity. So, you know, maybe just the structure of having to be distanced will help with that transition.
Yeah, it is a nice step kind of back into the full, whatever this normalcy is going to be, but it's a nice transitional step. And for kids with autism, knowing the rules is going to be really important. And that can help with social reasoning too, right? Like, okay, I can't get this close to you. I have to be 6 feet. That's the rule, right? I can't fist bump you if you go to like show a fist bump. That's the rule. It's not socially awkward. It's like, this is a rule I can follow. And that could be really helpful.
Great. The second part of Wendy's question has to do with testing, just because her son has lost so much in 5th grade virtually. She's asking, would you recommend she push for another IEE before 6th grade? You know, she's thinking that it's going to be too long of a process before the end of the school year. What are your recommendations for parents that really do feel like their children have regressed and want kind of the school to be aware of that or to have a plan moving forward?
I absolutely think an evaluation is essential, and you know, reaching out to a local evaluator of the school and asking for an IEE is going to be important. Some school districts say, well, we don't do it because we can't be in person yet, but really to push and advocate for something, because you know, the summer is going to be your opportunity to prepare for the transition back to 6th grade or whatever the grade is in the fall. So certainly try to get that evaluation.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone who commented and left us questions. If we didn't get to your questions, or if you want to keep this conversation going, a place to get your questions answered is our Mom Squad, our private Facebook group. Again, you can find it on our Facebook page or by searching Facebook groups, typing in SLC Mom Squad, and you can request to join. Another resource we have for you parents is our Peace group, our Peace meeting. It's a virtual parent support meeting. We meet once a month, and we go through Jill's book, At Wit's End, and we really dive into those underlying skills and what could be going on with your kids. Our next meeting is March 18th, Thursday, March 18th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. It is a little bit different format than this show, LD Expert Live. It is a Zoom meeting, so I do get to see you, and I'm really looking forward to that because it is more of a discussion, and I love it when parents come on and I can see your little boxes in there and just hear your stories and share resources and support one another, especially right now, and especially with the transition back to school. Our topic is going to be on core learning skills and retained reflexes, and discussing kind of how that impacts learning, behavior, functioning, all of those things. So really looking forward to seeing all of you. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Lots of important topics and questions. You can tell there's a lot of anticipation with parents with the return to school. So thanks to everyone who participated.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone, for your questions, for tuning in. This is LD Expert Live. I'm Jill Stowell here with Doctors O'Bannon and Boxer. It's hard to believe, but not only have we been in this pandemic for a year, but it's already time to start thinking about summer. I know at Stowell Learning Centers, we've already started planning summer intensive programs and a really fun and productive time with students for the summer. Learning has really been hit or miss this past year for all students, but especially for those who have learning or attention challenges. So this is definitely the time to get kids help so that they can close up that gap in their learning. And I understand, Dr. Boxer and Dr. O'Bannon, that you have a special event coming up in April where you'll be offering gap testing. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. We are so excited about this upcoming event. Just so that everybody knows, the idea behind GAP testing is for us to gauge academic progress. So GAP, kind of cool. So basically, we understand that there's been, for lack of a better word, sort of a loss of academic instruction during this past year. We've gotten lots of, comments and questions and referrals from parents and teachers and individuals who are saying that they're sort of worried and not really sure what to do during the summer as we prepare to go back to in-person learning. And so we really just wanted to push a community event. It'll be a free academic testing, just a brief screener, just to go over the domains of reading, math, and writing, just to get an understanding of if there are any holes in learning, as well as, Dr. Boxer mentioned before, we're very strengths-based. So we want to look at what strengths we see, and then also if there are any weaknesses, being able to provide our parents with some sort of understanding or plan, if you will, to go into the summer. So that's something that we're really excited about. There'll be 2 different dates in April, I believe the 18th and the 25th. They're both Sundays, as you have in this beautiful visual here. And so there will be limited appointments available, but it is something that we're opening up to our community just to get an idea of what's going on. And, we will have our executive functioning educational specialists from ह्युton Education, and is in addition to a number of materials from some of our other, partnering organizations that will be provided, just so that parents are able to leave with an idea of what do we do, what's our game plan, and what do we need to work on.
Wow, what an incredible gift to the community. Really. That's a great event. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, both of you. This was really amazing, all the different things that we were able to cover today. So thank you so much for that. Here is the contact information for Dr. Boxer and Dr. O'Bannon. Their practice is in Pasadena, California. So if you're local, be sure to check out their special Bridging the Gap event in April. And we've posted the information for you in the chat as well. This is LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning disabilities, dyslexia, and auditory and attention challenges. We're live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday, I'm honored and delighted to welcome Dr. 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗢𝗟 to the show. He is the co-founder of the Collaborative Problem-Solving Approach, and he'll be talking with us about common sense strategies for changing behavior so everyone wins. Be sure to join us next Tuesday for that. Stowell Learning Centers are open for remote sessions and screenings, so you can access our services wherever you are in the world. We're also seeing students on site at our 4 Southern California locations with all of the COVID precautions. We work with children and adults doing targeted brain training to permanently change dyslexia and other learning and attention challenges so that students can reach their potential and thrive in school. As you begin planning for summer, remember, summer intensive programs are a great way to make up for lost instruction and close up the academic gaps. If you would like a free consultation for yourself or your child, give us a call or visit our website at stowellcenter.com. Thank you again, Dr. Boxer and Dr. O'Bannon, for addressing so many relevant topics for us today. As always, we're very grateful to all of you who share, subscribe, and join us for the broadcast. Be sure to tune in for Dr. 𝗦𝗛𝗢𝗢𝗟𝗡 next week.